A show created by the fans, for the fans. We are your home for Ohio State football coverage all year long. The Scarlet and Gray Podcast, a Network 216 production. Live weekdays on the Network 216 YouTube channel. Send us all your questions and comments on Twitter at @VSG_podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Tyler Johnson, Jordan Dalton, and Nick Leisure.
Good evening, Buckeye Nation, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Scarlet and Gray Podcast. I am Tyler Johnson, this evening joined by Mr. JD, Jordan Dalton. JD, how you doing this evening, my dude?
Doing well. Wish Nick could have joined us, but he had stuff to do around the house, so it's just going to be me and TJ talking about Ohio State football.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's plenty to talk about tonight, man. Of course, with the spring game wrapping up, the transfer portal is just opened. There's a lot to discuss. We might even get into a little bit of recruiting as well. But before we get into any of that, guys, just as a reminder, take that quick second. If you would just drop a like on that video, we really would appreciate it. Helps that algorithm grow and push it out to viewers that are not familiar with the Scarlet and Gray Podcast. But also when you subscribe to the channel, it's completely free to do that as well. And it really helps us reach our goal of 3,000 subscribers, which we are about 450 away from. So if you could really do those two things, really would appreciate that. Also, the Scarlet and Gray Podcast is proud to be a partner of Homage Athletic Apparel. Right now, brand new customers, you get 15% off your first order. All you have to do is go to homage.com, sign up for their email alerts, and that'll give you 15% off your first order. You're not going to find a better place for vintage athletic apparel. So again, that's homage.com. JD, the spring game happened on Saturday. It was a windy one, there's no doubt, but we got to see our first glance at Will Howard, and I would say really of Devin Brown, because we haven't seen a lot of Devin Brown. We're going to talk mainly quarterbacks to start here, but from watching the two, did you have any takeaways? Again, we didn't see a lot. I mean, they only played a couple series, but did you have any takeaways just from watching them?
Yeah, I think Devin getting that third series was kind of interesting because I think they actually had Keenholz come out first. But I think Devin got the ones reps on that second drive. So yeah, I think some people were like, oh no, he like dropped down on the depth chart, but I think it was more so just he was getting that one look. I think Will looked solid for being new. He looked like he was the most composed quarterback out of the group, in my opinion, going back and watching it. He made a lot of good reads getting that ball down the field, but I think it's really hard to take away a lot from this game, just because it's not a game. It's a glorified practice that the coaches are putting the teams in situations, and it's I think one of the things is like the offense and the defense coaching staffs know what they're each running, so it's not like we're going to try to like catch him off guard here. It's a pretty scripted practice. So I think for what it was worth, Will Howard was the most composed, and that's kind of been what we've heard coming out of spring practices is that he's the guy that has the most experience, and it showed on Saturday.
I think too, just going kind of off what you said, the reason they gave Devin the third series is so it seemed like what they were doing is Will Howard, the ones on offense versus the ones on defense. Second series was Keenholz and the twos versus the twos on D. Yeah. And then switching it up to give Devin Brown that third series to be with the ones against the ones. Now, what I took away that I thought was interesting here is I think Ryan Day told us something in the spring game on Saturday. And again, whether it's the right decision or wrong decision, I've read things out there from like Bucknuts. I've seen it from listen to other shows that Devin Brown has looked better, at least in practices, than Will Howard has. And he's gotten the reps with the ones in practice, like starting out with the ones over Will Howard. What's interesting, Will Howard then comes out, takes the first snaps, But what Ryan Day told us on Saturday is you can say this is a quarterback competition all you want. My takeaway is there is no quarterback competition here because Ryan Day comes out with Will Howard under center to start against the ones. Then he goes to Devin Brown for the third series. What's telling to me is Will Howard goes back out, and when Will Howard does, he is with the ones against the ones the entire time he's out there. Devin Brown comes out for the second time, and he is with basically guys we rarely ever heard of, if at all heard of, against third-string defense. So that right there tells me if this was truly a quarterback competition, they're getting even reps with the ones. Like, that's not what happened. What also didn't happen, Will Howard threw more than Devin Brown did on Saturday. I think that was by design too. I really do. I haven't seen enough of Devin Brown. I mean, we saw a little bit in the spring game. We haven't really seen a lot from Will Howard. I mean, Will Howard both of them took care of the ball, so they did that very well. Both showed that they do have some mobility to them. Devin Brown took off a couple times. Will Howard was more in the pocket, which I think he was trying to prove a point there too, considering he doesn't want people to think he's just a running quarterback. But, I just think what we saw, Ryan Day told us what he's thinking. Because, again, it really seems to me, if the reports coming out are indeed true and Devin Brown is the one getting the first reps in practice with the ones, and then we get to spring ball and it's almost, in a way, somewhat the opposite of that. I don't know, man. To me, that's very telling of where this is. And I told you this, JD, and I hope this is not why. I still stand by it. Will Howard is going to be the starting quarterback because of what he is being paid to play at Ohio State. And again, I don't necessarily agree that's how it should be, but I'm just saying it doesn't surprise me because if we are being told that Devin Brown is the guy looking better in practice and then Ryan Day is putting Will Howard out with the ones, it's not about who's playing the best. There's more to it than just that at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's subjective as well as the fact that Devin Brown's also been in the system for 3 years, and Will Howard has been in the system for a few weeks. So I think there's kind of some give and take with Devin looking better in practice. That the one that I wanted to kind of go off of what you were saying about how he was leading the practices and the ones and with the ones and stuff. I guess pregame as well, he was taking first reps and was kind of leading the position group, and then they still sent out Will Howard. So I think you're kind of reading into that correctly, and I mean it's not going to be a shocking thing when Will Howard takes the first snaps to start the season. And a lot of the smoke about Julian Sain being the starter, I think he's still in the mix, but you can just see the inexperience when he's out there. And he's got an amazing arm, but it's just going to take time for him to get his feet under him and get comfortable in the pocket.
JD, we were talking about this a couple weeks ago. If it is indeed going to be Will Howard, which it seems that's going to be the case, and the reports are true about Devin Brown being the one that has performed better this spring, are you okay with that decision? How do you feel about that decision if the guy that looked better isn't the guy that's going to be the starting quarterback?
It's yeah, we talked about this for a while, but yeah, I'm not a fan of the politics. I think NIL is bringing a lot of outside pressure to the team and to the coaches to play certain people based on the amount of money that they're getting from the collectives. And that might not always be, or it might not always mean that the best player is going to be playing it. And so I'm not a huge fan of it because ultimately we want this team to win and we want them to succeed. But yeah, if Devin Brown's the best quarterback, he should be playing. That's simple as I can be with that.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. Like, and listen, I I told you guys when Will Howard came in and you start hearing the figures that he might be getting in order to be here, it's like, okay, this guy's making the money. Devin Brown's not making close to this. Like the writing to me, it's on the wall regardless of what we're being told in practice, because they're going to take the guy that they're giving the most money and put him on the bench. They're going to do that in this day and age in college football. I just don't see it. And again, I don't agree with that by any means. If that does play into the decision, I don't agree with that, because the best guy should always play. But, it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the portal, because there are rumblings that some teams are trying to get Devin Brown to enter the portal. He obviously said last time he was interviewed that he wasn't going anywhere. But I mean, if you're the guy that has looked better and they're going to pass you up, I mean, come on, man. Like, I at that point, I'm rooting for him to go somewhere. If Ryan Day and the offensive coaching staff is going with Will Howard, even though Devin Brown has looked like the better quarterback, dude, Devin, go somewhere and go ball out, because they just might not be giving you a chance here. I mean, that's where I'm kind of at with it.
You can also go back to last year with the quarterback battle with McCord. I mean, that was a battle that went 2 games into the season before it was decided, really. Mm-hmm. And I still don't think Devin Brown got a fair shake in that situation. Mm-hmm. And it almost feels like it's Devin Brown's inexperience is kind of always what's been holding him back in his consistency. Mm-hmm. And you can fix one of those things by playing the guy to give him experience. But if that's what's preventing him from getting on the field, he's never going to get experience and he's never going to play. So it's just one of those things. He might be the guy eventually, but like, how long does he want to stick around? Because Ohio State's just reloading that room behind him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I mean, you kind of mentioned Julian saying, obviously, the hype dies down a little bit from there. I still think he's going to be really good. I think Ryan Day also wanted him, and Lincoln Keenhold's throwing into the wind a little bit, especially Julian, because Julian's saying those were his first snaps outdoors since he came to Ohio State, getting used to that Ohio weather a little bit. But I'm really curious to see how much Julian's saying, if he bulks up anymore over the summer, what reports we're hearing from that, because I still think, and again, we'll see what happens with Devin Brown. I just find it hard to believe Devin Brown's going to stick around. I really do. If they are passing him up as the starter, which it appears they are, I think Julian Sand very well could be the backup this year. I love Lincoln. Like I said, had the opportunity to interview him last year. Great kid. I just don't know. I just don't think he'll ever be that guy here. And on Saturday, it just didn't play well on Saturday. I mean, there's no other way around it. And I've said this to you guys. Some people are like, there was rumors about him going to Iowa and whatnot. The best thing for Lincoln right now, stay at Ohio State. You need more development, which you're going to get from one of the best coaching staffs in college football. And then I would look to transfer after this year. That's personally what I would do if I was him, because I do think he has talent. I mean, he's very mobile too, which only helps you in the college game. I think he's got the talent. I just don't think Ohio State has the time to wait on that talent.
So one of the things that Ryan Day had been talking about, so in his press conference that he did last week, and then he also jumped in the spaces on X, a lot of these questions that he was fielding were pretty similar, and a lot of them revolved around the quarterback room and just the transfer portal in general. And he was talking about how the season is like no other season that we've seen in college football because of the 17 games, 12-team playoff. You're going to have to really go deep into your bench throughout the year because these guys are not used to playing this amount of games. And so you're going to have to rely on a lot of third stringers this year, and guys that are normally not asked to perform during the season are going to get snaps at really important times in the season. because, as the season goes on, injuries pile up, and next man up mentality, you're going to have guys that are, true freshmen, redshirt freshmen that are going to get snaps, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But he was kind of using that philosophy of like next man up for the quarterback position. And for me, that didn't make a whole lot of sense because there's only one quarterback there. You can only have one quarterback on the field at a time unless you're running some crazy offensive play or whatever. So, and I think there was a time where we were kind of joking about like a 2 quarterback system, but I can't see that happening. I can't see that happening with this offense. So I don't know. I don't see how he can use that analogy of it's a long season and we're going to need these guys, these third stringers, to apply to like Devin Brown, because if Will gets hurt, they might just lean, hey, we're going to throw Say into the fire and see what he can do. And I think that's more likely than Devin Brown coming in, honestly.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too, man. Terry, what's up, man? Appreciate you joining us. JD, we'll kind of you could talk about quarterbacks ad nauseum. You really could, and we're going to talk about it a lot more this offseason. So, what were some of your other takeaways from the spring game? I'm just going to – this one is short and sweet. The secondary is about to be the best in college football.
I just think the defense in general. The biggest highlight of the whole game was how stout they were in the red zone. They just looked really good, especially on that first drive. Will Howard had the team moving down. Offense was kind of clicking, and then stalled immediately outside the red zone. And I think if Ohio State wants to go anywhere this year, and we've talked about it last 2 years, that defense needs to step up. And they were honestly one of the best in college football last year. I don't see them being any worse than they were last year, which means they're going to be another top 5 defense. We've added Caleb Downs, returning majority of the defense, probably best secondary in football. It's going to be up to the offense to keep up with the defense, in my opinion, this season.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I completely agree with that. And the last thing I'll say about the quarterbacks is, regardless of who's starting, you don't need someone that's going to be an elite level. You just need someone that's just not going to turn it over 20 times a game.
And that's why,
because you have talented backs, you have the best defense in college. That's all you need. Like, to me, you don't need Superman out there. You just need a guy that's going to get the job done, run the offense. Because you're going to run it 60% of the time, more than likely, because you have one of the greatest running back duos ever assembled in the backfield this year. Like,
yeah,
no brainer.
Well, and I think that's why leaning Will Howard is probably not the wrong decision. If you're looking for a quarterback that can do what you said, not turn the ball over, has experience in big moments, and can kind of just keep the offensive moving, I think Will Howard's that guy. I think Devin Brown's a little bit more of a risk taker when it comes to making plays on the field. He might try to force things a little too much. He might have a higher upside, but he also, might be a little bit more turnover prone. And Julian Sain going out there without experience, I know Will Howard has some turnover issues as well, but maybe
which I will admit kind of worry me a little bit. But at the same time, here's the thing about Devin Brown, man. Is like, again, we haven't. Now, I will say, I think Devin Brown stretches the field for you more, but at the same time, I haven't seen enough of Devin Brown as my thing. Like, I just haven't. I want to see him, but I don't know if I'm ever going to actually get to see him.
Yeah, it was kind of a shame because that Missouri game would have been the perfect time to see what you had in Devin Brown. And granted, the game didn't start off great for him, but he only played a quarter and a half and then he was done. And there's a lot of opportunities to see in there what we had. And I think honestly, Ryan Day was kind of thinking the exact same thing. Like, hey, this is a big moment. We can see what we have in Devin Brown and move forward in the portal. And he didn't really get to showcase himself in that game.
Yeah. All right. Now we are for sure moving on because, like I said, the quarterbacks are the easiest thing to talk about. We got to see Quinshon Judkins on Saturday.
Briefly.
He's going to be a beast for Ohio State. He's going to be so good. I'm trying to think. What also really stood out to me, I think, and I did tweet this at the SG_podcast on Twitter. If you're not following us yet, most of you are, but if you're not, there is no need, in my opinion, to go after a running back in the transfer portal. They still might, okay, for just the experience factor of wanting just some more experience in the room. These freshman backs, Sam Williams-Dixon, James Peoples, if these guys had to step in, and I'm not talking like start just because I don't know that yet. If these guys had to step in though and give you some like a rep from time to time to spell Judkins or Henderson, I would trust them. I mean, Sam Williams-Dixon looks now again, they're playing against backups, so keep that take that with a grain of salt too. I'm telling you what, man, that was the first I saw both of them. We got some good young backs, dude. It's very encouraging to see.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was kind of my other highlight was the backs. The young guys looked really good. TC Caffey, another one. They were just giving you good yardage on the run, and I think Ryan Day said he's like all 5 of our running backs in the room are 3-down backs, so they can all pass protect, they can all catch out of the backfield, and they can all run in between the tackles. And he said that that's going to be really valuable in the season, especially at running back. Running back's a position that takes a lot of wear and tear throughout the season. It's probably the primary reason Judkins and Henderson decided to team up this year was because they kind of know where their draft stock lies, and they know that being the workhorse for another year in college football is probably not best for their long-term or longevity going into the NFL next season. So I think that having those young backs behind them is perfect. It's I think a couple of them will be redshirted this year, but I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a couple of those guys on the field this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if they did look at a guy, like if they wanted to bring in experience, the guy to me makes the most sense, who he was going to transfer to Louisville, it looks like, but now he's back in the portal, is former Toledo running back Penny Boone, over 1,000 yards last year. I think he'd be a great – if they want experience, that's where I would go again, and it would be somewhat home for him because he already played at Toledo anyway. Terry also adds Trey about to go stupid in this offense. Yeah, it's not under the realm of possibility. And again, we'll have season predictions when we get closer and whatnot. Once like the final roster is done, it wouldn't shock me because I really believe this team's going to run at 60% of the time, as you should with these backs. They stay healthy. They're going to knock on wood because that's an if. It really is, especially with Travion Henderson. Both these backs can go for 1,000 yards, and it is not far-fetched, especially given the level of competition that you have at the beginning of the year to really stat pat. Like, now, again, they're not probably going to play all 4 quarters, nor do they need to, but I'm just saying the schedule sets up. They could each be 1,000-yard backs easily in this offense. So
I don't doubt that either. I did read Chip Kelly's going to kind of stick with that zone read. Or it's going to be a zone offense, zone run. But I believe there's going to be some read option in there as well for Will Howard to run the ball. So I think we're going to see a really fun running game that we haven't seen at Ohio State in a long time.
I agree with that. And he also adds James Peoples looks like a future elite back. I agree with that. When I think of James Peoples, it's hard not to make the comparison because they're similar body types. Right now, he's a poor man's J.K. Dobbins. He reminds me of that type of player. J.K. Dobbins is one of the best running backs in Ohio State history, so I'm not here to say it's who he's going to be. But a poor man's J.K. Dobbins is who he reminds me of. And Ohio State's really, I mean, you have James Peoples, you have Sam Williams-Dixon. You're looking at 2025, good opportunity. You're going to bring in the top back from the class, Jordan Davidson. You're looking at bring Bo Jackson, not the Hall of Famer. Bo Jackson, bringing him in. You're probably going to bring in another back. Like, you're going to be young in the backfield next year, and you're going to need someone to step up unless, of course, they go back, which they could. They could go back to the portal next year if they want a veteran, which would make some sense, I admit. But it's good to see that I think Carlos Lachlan is going to be great for this group. We know he's really good at coaching backs and developing them. He even admitted he's not a top recruiter. He said that in his press conference. I'm not a top recruiter. I'm a football coach. And it's hard to argue with the results that he's had as a running back coach. So definitely excited there. We have a couple more minutes left, JD. Outside of course, the running backs, like seeing Judkins for the first time. Anything else really stood out to you on Saturday? Again, it's hard to really say, oh, this is what this is going to look like. This is what we're going to see this year. Because again, they don't show a lot in the spring game because you don't want to give anything away.
I will say the one thing stood out was Emeka Egbuka and how he looked physically, running his routes and getting out of his breaks. And then he also had that amazing one-handed catch on the sidelines. We didn't see that Emeka last year. And so him being healthy, him playing in the game, I know there was some rumblings that he could possibly be a transfer in the spring portal. I don't think that's going to be a thing, especially with how much he got on the field with the ones and how good he looked. So I think those rumors were kind of squashed, but him being healthy is a game changer for this offense.
Absolutely. And I even said this on Saturday too. Emeka Egbuka is going to lead this group. He's going to be the alpha. Everyone wants to talk about Jeremiah Smith, and listen, rightfully so. I get it. The hype is justified, even though we didn't see a lot of it in the spring game on display. Emeka Egbuka, though, if he's the guy that we have seen, again, he's been decimated by injuries throughout his time here, and it's a shame. He's a first-round talent. He's a good wide receiver. And the other guy we didn't get to see, unfortunately, due to injury, but it looks like he should be fine, is Brandon Enos. We haven't gotten to see him. I would tell you, too, JD, it's going to be interesting. I don't know how much he's going to play this year because similar to Enos last year, he's going to be enrolling this summer. I'm telling you, Mylan Graham is a really good player. He's going to be a true freshman. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to play much. I really don't because, again, I think he's going to be the Brandon Enos's role that he had last year. He's a good player, though, man. I'm telling you, you watch there is a clip of him doing these route running drills. Oh, my goodness. He's such a smooth athlete. He had a huge rise, too, if you look at overall his climb up the recruiting rankings. Brian Hartline discovered him actually pretty early. So I'm really excited about him. Bryson Rogers, we didn't really get to see in the spring game, but, we've heard he's looked really good in practice. It's just another stacked group at receiver. So good luck when Ohio State runs it 60% of the time. And then Will Howard, whoever's playing quarterback, just has to throw these elite guys, whether it's slants or short passes, because you have guys everywhere on the field that can create a catch.
Yeah, don't sleep on Carnell Tate as well. He's a really good wide receiver.
I was so surprised, man. I guess I expected him to touch the ball in the spring game. It was just weird. He really
he had a few catches.
I guess I just missed those. Maybe just because he didn't really throw it down the field. That's probably why. Yeah. I'm excited about Carnell Tate too. That's another good one.
He was phenomenal last year as a freshman.
Yeah, he was great. I think the other thing I want to hit on just real quick, there isn't really much on the transfer portal so far. Ohio State has safety Cedric Hawkins entered the portal. He was a freshman. He never played for Ohio State, but want to wish him the best. Hopefully he succeeds somewhere. We're keeping an eye on a couple other guys. Derek Graham, offensive tackle from Troy, originally committed to Texas A&M. He has re-entered the portal. The reason that is interesting for Buckeye fans because Ohio State needs help on the line, but also Graham visited Ohio State back in January. So just something to keep in mind there. I don't know if they're going to end up getting him or not. I really don't, but still he'd be a solid addition. He gave up 3 sacks and Only 3 sacks and well over 500 snaps last year. I know the level of competition wasn't as high, but, wouldn't be a bad addition from the portal. But, JD, are there any other positions from the portal? I mean, again, offensive line's the big one. Is there any other position that if you're Ohio State, you would look to maybe bring some depth in through the portal that could really just help the team this year?
Kind of going off the offensive line, I think maybe another tight end. I know we brought in the guy from Ohio, and G. Scott is still in the room, but maybe like a run blocking tight end would be kind of my thought. Just like a bigger guy with some experience playing. But other than that, offensively, we're pretty good. Other than the offensive line, I think that's definitely going to be addressed here in the spring. And defensively, maybe linebacker.
Yeah. No, I like those. I would love tight end. Dude, I don't know what's going on with Jelani Thurman. Dude's an athletic specimen, and it just seems like I don't know why he's not. I'm hoping, I would love to see him become the starter at some point, because I think he just brings another dimension to the offense with what he can do at the tight end position as an athlete. I know you got Tamarian Witten coming in as a summer enrollee, but his dad said, actually commented on our post that said he's actually going to be starting off in the wide receiver room, which is kind of interesting. But he's another really athletic kid. So you have some guys that are athletes, so I'm curious how that shakes out. The other position I'm kind of watching a little bit, I want to see if they add a defensive lineman. There are some rumblings that kid from Alabama, Keon Keeley, might look to enter the portal. That is someone that former 5-star recruit, Ohio State, had a lot of interest in during his recruitment. Things haven't really worked out there at Bama. If he enters, I'm curious on how that would shake out and who would possibly leave if Ohio State brought in Keeley. So some things to watch there. Only thing we'll wrap up with is on the recruiting side of things. Actually, just today, Zion Grady, who 5-star defensive end, the 2025 class, is going to be visiting Ohio State May 3rd through the 5th. So that's a pretty big deal for Ohio State. That one actually came out of nowhere. He kind of just announced that himself. But also, Jordan Davidson has been crystal balled multiple times to Ohio State, top running back in the 2025 class. Jamie French, one of the top receivers in the class of 2025, crystal balled multiple times to Ohio State. Vernell Brown III, a lot of competition again between Ohio State and Florida schools. Brian Hartline's pretty good at those competitions, though. Ohio State's multiple crystal balls for him. Who am I missing? Safety Fahim Deline, one of the best safeties in the class of 2025, has multiple crystal balls to end up at Ohio State. I'm trying to think, is there anybody else I'm forgetting? I don't think so, at least right now. But so that's your recruiting update. JD, is there anything else you want to add just before we wrap up this episode?
John Madden once said, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none.
A great way that's a great quote to end it on. But anyways, guys, thank you for tuning into this episode of the Scarlet and Gray podcast. Again, take that quick second, drop that like on that video, give us that thumbs up, help that algorithm grow for us. But also subscribe if you're brand new to the channel, as we are on the push, like I said, for 3,000 subscribers. Can't get there without your help. And we really appreciate that support. Remember, it's free to like, free to subscribe. We will talk to you guys all again next week. As always, go Buckeyes.